A single candle, a dark room, no sound except your own breathing. You've felt it before. That moment, right before sleep, when your mind finally stops fighting you. For 3 seconds, maybe 5, everything goes still, and then it's gone. The thoughts rush back in, like water through a cracked dam. What if that stillness wasn't an accident? What if it was a door, and you just never learned how to walk through it on purpose? Tonight, before you close your eyes, I want to show you something old, something quiet. A way of meeting your own mind that doesn't fight the noise, doesn't drown it out, doesn't numb it away. It simply lets it settle, the way mud settles in still water, until you can finally see through to the bottom. This isn't about emptying your head like some monk on a mountain. You have a job, bills, people who need you. This is about something smaller and somehow bigger, learning to sit inside your own mind without needing to escape it. Here's the problem, and I think you already know it. You lie down at night, exhausted, and your body wants sleep, but your mind has other plans. It replays the conversation you should have handled differently. It rehearses tomorrow's conversation you haven't even had yet. It worries about money, about time, about whether you're doing any of this right. You are tired in your bones and wide awake in your head, and nobody warned you these could happen at the same time. You've tried counting sheep. You've tried scrolling until your eyes burn. You've tried telling yourself to just relax, which, if you've noticed, never actually works. Telling a loud mind to be quiet is like shouting at a crying child to stop crying. It doesn't listen to force, it listens to something else entirely. That's what we're going to talk about. The mind is not your enemy. There's a moment almost everyone has lived through, even if they've never put words to it. You're lying in bed, the lights are off, the day is technically over, and your mind decides this is exactly the right time to start working. Not resting, working. It pulls up old conversations and edits them in real time, giving you better comebacks for arguments that ended hours ago. It drags in tomorrow's meeting before you've even had breakfast yet. It reminds you of that email you forgot to send, the strange look someone gave you at lunch, the thing you said that you're still not sure landed right. And somewhere in the middle of all that noise, you find yourself doing the thing almost everyone does. You start fighting it. You tell your mind, quite firmly, to stop. You tell yourself you need to relax. You try to force the noise down, like you're holding a door shut against wind. And it never works. Not really. Maybe for a minute, if you're lucky. Then the door creaks open again, and the wind comes right back in, sometimes louder than before, almost as if it resents being pushed away. Here's the truth. Most people never get taught. Not in school, not by anyone rushing them through life. Your mind is not attacking you. It only feels that way because you've spent so long treating it like an opponent. Picture it differently for a second. Picture your mind as something closer to a person who has been standing outside your door all day, waiting for 5 minutes of your attention, and you kept walking past, telling them, "Not now, not now, not now." By the time night comes and everything else goes quiet, that patient waiting turns into something louder. Not because it wants to hurt you, because it's finally been given room to speak, and it's been holding a lot in. This is the part that changes everything if you actually let it sink in. You don't need to fight your thoughts into silence. You need to let them finish their sentence. Most people spend their whole lives at war with their own minds, without realizing there was never supposed to be a war in the first place. We're taught, quietly and without anyone directly saying it, that a good mind is a quiet one, an obedient one, a mind that does what you want when you want it. So the moment thoughts get loud or messy or uncomfortable, we treat that as a failure. something broken, something to shut down as fast as possible. But thoughts aren't malfunctions, they're closer to messengers. And messengers who get ignored don't go away. They just start shouting louder to be heard. Think about the last time you tried to suppress a thought completely. Maybe it was a worry about money, or a fear about your health, or a memory you didn't want to sit with. What happened? Did it vanish because you told it to, or did it just wait for a quieter moment to come back even stronger? This is the pattern almost nobody notices, because we're too busy trying to win a fight that was never actually necessary. So here's the shift, and it's smaller than you'd expect, but it changes the entire relationship you have with your own mind. Instead of asking, "How do I make this thought stop?" you ask something completely different. You ask, "What is this thought trying to tell me before it can finally rest?" That single change in the question changes everything about how the moment feels. You stop treating your mind like a machine that's broken and start treating it like a part of you that simply hasn't been allowed to speak. And most of the time, thoughts don't need to be solved. They don't need a 5-step plan or a perfect answer. They just need to be witnessed. Once, honestly, without judgment. Like a friend who doesn't need you to fix their problem, they just need you to actually listen instead of already thinking about what you're going to say back. This is harder than it sounds, because we live in a world that trains us to solve everything immediately. A thought shows up, and we want to fix it, argue with it, distract from it, or bury it under something else. Work, scrolling, noise, anything. But a thought that only wants to be acknowledged doesn't need any of that. It just needs a moment of honest attention. And the moment you give it that attention, something quiet happens. The volume drops. Not because you defeated it, because it was never trying to hurt you. It was only ever trying to be heard. Think about people in your own life, the ones who feel calm to be around, the ones who seem to carry themselves with quiet strength. Have you ever noticed they're not people with empty minds? They still have doubts, fears, memories, all of it. What's different is how they relate to those things. They don't treat their inner world like an enemy camp. They treat it like weather. It comes, it passes, and they don't take it personally when a storm rolls through. They've simply stopped being at war with themselves, and that absence of war is what people mistake for peace. You can have that same relationship with your own mind. It starts with something almost embarrassingly simple. The next time a thought comes at night, loud and insistent, instead of pushing it away, try pausing and asking it silently, "What are you trying to tell me?" You don't have to answer out loud. You don't have to solve it. Just let the question sit there. Most of the time, the thought softens the moment it's acknowledged, the way a crying child calms down the instant someone finally kneels down and looks them in the eye. This isn't weakness. This isn't giving in. This is actually the harder path, because it takes more courage to sit with a thought honestly than to shove it down and pretend it isn't there. But it's the only path that actually leads somewhere. Fighting your mind keeps you in the same loop every night, exhausted and awake at the same time. Listening to it, even briefly, is what finally lets that loop close. Your mind was never your enemy. It was only ever waiting for you to stop running from it. The space between thoughts. There is a place inside you that you've visited 1,000 times without ever realizing you were there. It's not somewhere far away. It's not something you have to search for on a mountain or in a book. It's small, quiet, and it shows up constantly, all day, every day. You've just never been taught to notice it. It's the space between one thought ending and the next one beginning. Most people live their entire lives jumping from thought to thought, like stepping across stones in a fast-moving river, never pausing long enough to notice there's still water flowing beneath each step. One thought finishes, and immediately, almost violently, another one begins. Worry about work turns into worry about a relationship, which turns into a memory, which turns into a plan for tomorrow, which turns into worry again. It feels like one long, unbroken stream of noise, but it isn't. There are gaps, tiny openings between each thought, where for a fraction of a second, nothing is happening at all. You've just never stayed there long enough to notice. This gap is easy to miss because it's brief. It might only last a second, sometimes less, but it's real. And more importantly, it's available to you constantly, not just during meditation or in some special quiet room, but right in the middle of an ordinary, chaotic day. It's there while you're waiting for a kettle to boil. It's there in the half second after you put your phone down. It's there in the pause right before you fall asleep, that strange in-between moment when your mind hasn't quite handed control over to dreams yet. Most people rush straight through this space without ever noticing it exists, because we've been trained our whole lives to keep moving. Stillness feels unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable, like an empty chair in a room full of people talking. So the moment a thought finishes, we instinctively reach for the next one, afraid of what might happen if we just wait. But this is exactly where the mind actually rests, not in some permanent state of emptiness that never gets interrupted. That's not how minds work. And expecting that is exactly what makes people give up on stillness before they even start. Real rest isn't the absence of thought forever. It's found in these small, repeating openings, if you're willing to stay in them, even for a second longer than you normally would. Here's something worth trying tonight. Not right now while you're reading this, but later, when you're lying down and your mind starts doing what it always does. Let a thought finish completely. Don't chase the next one immediately. Just wait. 1 second. That's it. That 1 second is the door. It sounds almost too small to matter, but that's exactly the point. You don't need a dramatic technique or an hour of silence to touch this space. You need one honest second of not rushing forward. And the more you practice pausing there, even briefly, the more familiar that space becomes, until eventually it stops feeling like an empty gap and starts feeling like a place you can actually rest inside. Think about how differently a river sounds depending on how fast it's moving. A river rushing over rocks is loud, chaotic, impossible to hear anything clearly over. But a river moving slowly, even for a moment, becomes quiet enough that you can hear individual sounds. A bird, the wind, your own breathing. Your mind works the same way. When thoughts move quickly, one crashing into the next without pause, everything feels overwhelming and loud. But the moment you allow even a small gap between them, the whole noise level drops. Not because the thoughts disappeared, but because you finally gave yourself room to hear something other than noise. This space between thoughts isn't something you have to create from nothing. It's already there. It's been there your whole life. What's missing isn't the gap, it's your attention to it. Most of us have simply never been taught to notice something so quiet, especially in a world that rewards constant movement, constant productivity, constant noise, silence. Even a single second of it can feel unfamiliar at first, almost uncomfortable, but that discomfort fades quickly the more you sit with it, and what's left behind is something surprisingly steady. You don't need to eliminate your thoughts to feel calm. You need to notice the space that already exists between them. That space doesn't ask anything of you. It doesn't require effort or force. It's simply there, waiting, the same way it's always been there, quietly, underneath every thought you've ever had. Tonight, when your mind starts its usual routine, jumping, worrying, replaying, planning, try not to fight it. Just notice the tiny pause after each thought ends. Stay there for 1 extra second. That's not nothing. That 1 second, repeated enough times, is often the difference between a mind that feels like a storm and a mind that finally feels like it has room to breathe. Naming without judging. There's a quiet habit, taught gently in Japanese contemplative tradition, that most people in the modern world have never been shown. It isn't complicated, it isn't mystical, it doesn't require incense or silence or sitting cross-legged on a cushion somewhere. It's something you can do lying in bed, in the dark, in the middle of an ordinary, exhausting day. And it's this: instead of fighting a feeling, you simply name it. Not, "I'm anxious, and that's a problem, and I need to fix it right now." Not, "Why am I like this? What's wrong with me? Why can't I just relax?" Just this. This is anxiety. Nothing more attached to it. No story, no verdict, no explanation required. Just a quiet recognition, the same way you'd notice the color of a wall or the shape of a cloud, without needing to argue about whether it should be there. This sounds almost too simple to actually work. But there's something happening underneath the simplicity that's worth understanding, because once you feel it for yourself, you won't forget it. Most people don't just feel an emotion, they become it. Anxiety shows up, and within seconds, it's not just a feeling passing through, it's suddenly the whole identity of the moment. "I am anxious" quietly turns into "I am an anxious person." Sadness becomes not just a wave moving through you, but proof that something is wrong with you at a deeper level. The feeling stops being weather and starts being climate, something permanent, something that defines you, rather than something simply passing through. Naming interrupts that collapse. The moment you say, even silently, "This is anxiety," instead of "I am anxious," you create just enough distance to remember something important. You are the one noticing the anxiety. You are not the anxiety itself. That might sound like a small difference in wording, but it changes the entire experience. It's the difference between being pulled underwater by a wave and standing on the shore, watching the wave move past you. Same ocean, completely different relationship to it. This is why naming works so quietly and so effectively. It doesn't try to erase the feeling. It doesn't pretend the feeling isn't real or valid. It simply gives the feeling a name instead of a life sentence. "This is anxiety" acknowledges what's happening without letting it take over the whole story. It's honest without being dramatic. It's present without being permanent. Think about how differently a feeling behaves when it's named versus when it's fought. When you fight a feeling, when you tell yourself not to feel it, when you push it down, distract from it, argue with it, it tends to dig in harder. It's almost like the feeling senses resistance and responds by getting louder. The way a fire gets more intense, the more oxygen you throw at it, by struggling against it. But when you name a feeling, instead of fighting it, something almost opposite happens. It softens, not immediately, not dramatically, but noticeably. The grip loosens slightly, the same way tension in your shoulders eases the moment you finally admit you've been carrying stress there all day, instead of pretending you're fine. There's a particular kind of relief that comes from simply telling the truth to yourself, not a performed version of your feelings, not a polished explanation, just the plain, unedited fact of what's happening inside you right now. This is anxiety. This is sadness. This is anger. No qualifiers, no judgment, no demand that it be different than it is. This becomes especially powerful at night, when your mind tends to bring up everything you didn't have time to feel during the day. Lying in the dark, a feeling rises. Maybe it's worry, maybe it's loneliness, maybe it's something harder to name at all. The instinct is usually to distract from it immediately, reach for a phone, replay a memory, plan tomorrow, anything but sit with the raw feeling itself. But if you can pause, even briefly, and simply name what's there without judging it, something shifts. It's like meeting a storm, and instead of running from it or trying to control it, you simply say, "I see you. I know what you are." And storms, more often than people expect, tend to calm down a little once they've finally been seen. This practice isn't about becoming emotionless or detached. It's the opposite. It's about becoming close enough to your own emotions to actually witness them clearly, instead of being swept away every single time one shows up. A cloud passing through the sky doesn't need to be fought. It doesn't need to be judged as good or bad. It's simply seen, acknowledged, and allowed to keep moving. Because clouds, by their very nature, don't stay forever. Your feelings work the same way, more often than you'd expect. They arrive, they ask to be noticed, and if you meet them honestly, instead of resisting them, they tend to move on far more quickly than if you spend all your energy trying to push them away. Naming, without judgment, is how you stop being the storm and start being the sky wide enough to hold it. The weight you didn't know you were holding. There's a particular kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. You can rest for 8 hours, wake up on time, do everything the wellness articles tell you to do, and still feel like something heavy is sitting on your chest that you can't quite name. Most people assume that heaviness is about today, something that happened this week, some stress from work, some argument, some deadline. And sometimes that's true. But often, if you're honest with yourself, the heaviness doesn't match anything that happened recently at all. It's bigger than today, older than today. And that's usually the first clue that you're not carrying today's weight. You're carrying something you never got the chance to put down. Here's something almost nobody tells you about emotions, especially the difficult ones. They don't disappear just because you didn't have time for them. Grief you postponed because you had to keep functioning doesn't quietly vanish. Anger you swallowed because it wasn't the right moment to express it doesn't dissolve into nothing. Fear you pushed aside because you had responsibilities to handle doesn't simply stop existing. All of it waits. Quietly, patiently, sometimes for years, tucked into some back corner of you, not gone, just paused. And it waits for a moment when you're finally still enough for it to be heard. That moment, more often than not, arrives at night. This is why some nights feel unbearably heavy, for reasons you can't quite explain. You didn't have a particularly hard day, nothing dramatic happened, and yet the second your head hits the pillow and the world finally goes quiet, something rises up inside you that feels bigger than anything that occurred in the last 24 hours. That's not today's noise. That's old noise, finally getting its turn, because for the first time all day, you're actually still enough to hear it. Think about how much of daily life is built around staying busy. Work, errands, conversations, notifications, plans, responsibilities. One thing after another, almost never pausing. And there's a strange kind of safety in that constant motion, because as long as you're moving, you never have to sit still long enough for anything old to catch up with you. Busyness becomes a kind of armor, not because you're avoiding life, but because stopping, even for a moment, means facing whatever you've been quietly outrunning. But night has a way of stripping all of that away. The distractions fall silent. The obligations are finished, at least for now, and suddenly there's nothing left standing between you and whatever you've been carrying. This is often mistaken for insomnia, or stress, or just having a lot on your mind. But sometimes what's actually happening is far older than that. Sometimes what surfaces at night isn't about tonight at all. It's a version of you from months or years ago, finally getting a moment to speak, because you never gave them the chance during the day. This weight, isn't a flaw. It isn't proof that something is broken in you. It's simply what happens to anyone who has ever had to keep functioning while feeling something they didn't have the space to fully process. Maybe it was grief you had to set aside because there were things that still needed to get done. Maybe it was fear you buried because showing it didn't feel safe at the time. Maybe it was disappointment or heartbreak or exhaustion you never actually let yourself feel because someone needed you to be okay, or because you needed yourself to be okay. Whatever it was, it didn't disappear. It just got tucked away, waiting for a quiet enough moment to finally be acknowledged. And here's the important part. This isn't something you need to fear. It might feel overwhelming when it surfaces, especially if it's been buried a long time, but its arrival isn't punishment. It's an invitation. It's your own mind finally trusting you enough, finally finding you still enough to bring something forward that's been waiting to be seen. The instinct, when this happens, is usually to push it away again, to distract, to scroll, to busy the mind with something else so you don't have to feel whatever just surfaced. And sometimes that's necessary, especially if it's the middle of a hard week and you genuinely don't have the capacity to sit with something heavy right now. But over time, constantly pushing things back down doesn't make them lighter. It just makes the pile bigger and the nights heavier, because everything you refuse to feel simply waits for the next quiet moment to try again. What helps, instead, is something much gentler than people expect. You don't need to relive every difficult memory in detail. You don't need to analyze exactly why something is surfacing tonight. You simply need to acknowledge that it's there. Not fix it, not solve it, not even understand it fully. Just notice it, the way you'd notice a familiar ache in your body. Ah, this again, without needing to immediately do something about it. Sometimes the kindest thing you can say to yourself in that moment is simply, I see you. I know you've been waiting. I'm not ready to carry all of this apart tonight, but I see that you're here. That alone changes something. It's the difference between a feeling banging on a locked door forever and a feeling that's finally been acknowledged, even briefly, and can therefore rest a little easier until you have more space to meet it fully. This is worth remembering the next time a heavy night arrives with no clear explanation. You haven't done anything wrong. You're not broken, and you're not weak for feeling something you can't immediately trace back to today. You're simply a person who has lived enough life to be carrying things. And tonight, for whatever reason, your mind finally found enough stillness to let some of it surface. That's not a malfunction. That's healing, even if it doesn't feel like healing in the moment. Some weight only gets lighter once it's finally been allowed into the light. Even briefly, even quietly, even in the middle of an ordinary, unremarkable night. Breath as an anchor, not an escape. Somewhere along the way, focus on your breath became one of those phrases people hear so often, it stops meaning anything at all. It's printed on posters, mentioned in every wellness app, repeated so casually that most people nod along without ever actually understanding what it's supposed to do. So it gets dismissed, filed away as another piece of advice that sounds nice, but doesn't actually help when your mind is racing at 11 at night and sleep feels impossible. But there's a reason this advice has survived for thousands of years, across nearly every contemplative tradition on Earth, long before wellness apps existed, long before anyone turned it into a poster. It's not a trick. It's not a distraction technique. It works for a very specific reason that most people never get told. Your breath is the only thing in your entire experience that is always, without exception, happening right now. Not 5 minutes ago, not tomorrow. Right now, in this exact moment, your breath is either entering or leaving your body. It cannot happen in the past. It cannot happen in the future. It is permanently, unavoidably present. This matters more than it seems, Because most nighttime anxiety isn't actually about the present moment at all. It's about something that already happened, something you can't change anymore, or something that hasn't happened yet, something you can't control yet either. Your mind drags you backward into old conversations, or forward into imagined future problems, and in both directions, you're somewhere other than here. The breath is the one thing that can quietly interrupt that pattern, not by forcing your thoughts to stop, but by giving your attention one honest, real, present moment thing to hold on to, while everything else keeps swirling around it. This is the part people misunderstand most often. Focusing on your breath isn't about escaping your thoughts. It's not a way to distract yourself from what's happening in your mind, the same way scrolling your phone distracts you. It's an anchor, not an exit. The thoughts are still allowed to be there. The worry doesn't have to disappear. The breath simply gives you something steady to hold on to, while all of that continues to move through you. The way a ship doesn't stop the waves by dropping anchor. It simply stops being thrown around helplessly by them. You don't need a complicated technique to access this. In fact, the simpler it is, the more effective it tends to be, because complicated techniques require effort, and effort is the last thing your exhausted mind needs at 11 at night. 4 seconds in, a brief pause at the top. 6 seconds out. Nothing forced, nothing dramatic, nothing that requires you to be good at meditation or have any experience with breathing exercises at all. Just something real, happening right now, in a mind that spends most of its time anywhere except now. What's remarkable about this simple rhythm is how quickly it changes the nervous system, not just the mind. A longer exhale than inhale is one of the most reliable, well-documented ways to signal safety to your body. Your body doesn't know the difference between danger in your imagination and danger that's actually happening. It responds physically either way, tightening, quickening, preparing for something that usually never actually comes. But a slow, steady breath, especially one where the exhale lasts longer than the inhale, tells your nervous system, quietly and directly, that you are safe right now. Not that everything is solved, not that every problem is fixed, just that in this exact moment, breathing in and out, you are safe. This is why the breath works, even when your thoughts are still loud. You're not trying to silence the storm, you're simply finding one steady point inside it. 4 seconds in, hold. 6 seconds out. Again and again. Not because the counting itself is magic, but because it gives your mind a present moment task simple enough that it doesn't require effort, yet real enough that it isn't just another distraction. Try this tonight, especially on a night when your thoughts feel too loud to quiet through willpower alone. Don't try to stop thinking. Don't try to force calm. Just breathe in for 4, hold briefly, breathe out for 6, and let your attention rest there, on the actual physical sensation of air moving in and out of your body. Thoughts will still show up. That's fine. Let them pass by, like traffic on a street you're standing near, but not standing in the middle of. The breath doesn't remove the traffic. It just gives you a solid piece of ground to stand on while it passes. Over time, this becomes less like an exercise and more like a familiar door you know how to find, even in the dark. The moment your mind starts racing, you won't need to search for calm somewhere outside yourself. You'll simply return to your breath, 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out, and remember that no matter how loud your thoughts get, there is always one thing happening in this exact moment that is real, steady, and entirely yours. The room you create inside yourself. Picture your mind as a physical room for a moment. Not metaphorically distant, but as real as any room in your actual home. Now picture what that room looks like after a long, demanding day. Notifications piled in one corner. Unfinished conversations scattered across the floor. Other people's opinions stacked on shelves you never asked for. Old arguments you never got to finish sitting in the middle of the room, like furniture nobody bothered to move. Deadlines, worries, half-formed plans for tomorrow. All of it thrown in, without order, without care, because there was never a moment during the day to actually deal with any of it properly. Most people live in a room like this, without ever realizing they're allowed to clean it. Nobody teaches this. Nobody sits you down and says, at the end of the day, you're allowed to put things back where they belong, inside your own mind. So the clutter just builds, day after day, night after night, until eventually it feels normal to lie down for sleep in a room this crowded. You've simply never known anything different. You grew up watching the adults around you carry the same kind of clutter, calling it stress, calling it just being an adult, calling it something you simply have to live with. So you inherited the mess without ever inheriting any instructions for how to clear it. Here's what's important to understand though, because it changes everything about how you approach this. A quiet mind isn't a mind with nothing in it. That's a common misunderstanding, and it's part of why people give up on the idea of mental stillness before they even try. They assume it means becoming empty, thoughtless, blank. But that's not what stillness actually is, and expecting that kind of emptiness is setting yourself up to fail before you even start. A quiet mind is simply a mind where things have been put in their place, instead of piled everywhere at once, colliding into each other all night long. Think about the difference between a messy room and an organized one, even if both rooms contain the exact same number of items. A messy room feels chaotic, overwhelming, impossible to relax in, because everything is out of place, competing for attention all at once. An organized room, even one that's completely full, feels calm, because everything has a spot, and nothing is fighting for your focus at the same time. Your mind works exactly the same way. The goal was never to have fewer thoughts. The goal is to give each thought a place to rest, instead of letting all of them pile on top of each other in one overwhelming heap right before you try to sleep. Consider what actually happens on a night when sleep feels impossible. It's rarely one single overwhelming thought keeping you awake. More often, it's 5 or 6 smaller things, all competing at once. A comment someone made, a task you forgot, a bill you need to pay, a conversation you're dreading tomorrow, a nagging feeling you can't quite name. None of these alone would keep a person up for hours. But piled together, unsorted, unspoken, they create a kind of pressure that feels much bigger than any of the individual pieces. That pressure isn't really about the size of the problems. It's about how crowded the room has become. Each night, you're given a small, quiet opportunity to do this. Not a demand, not an obligation, just an opportunity, easily missed if you don't know it's there. This isn't about solving every problem before bed. That's an impossible standard nobody could meet, and expecting it of yourself only adds more clutter, not less. It's about something much smaller and far more achievable. It's about setting a few things down so they're not sitting on your chest all night, pressing against you while you're trying to rest. What does this actually look like in practice? It's simpler than it sounds. Before sleep, instead of letting every unfinished thought from the day continue running wild in your head, you take a few quiet moments to acknowledge them, one at a time. Not to fix them, just to notice them, and mentally set them down somewhere, the way you'd place an item back on a shelf, instead of leaving it in the middle of the floor. This worry about tomorrow, I see you. You can rest here for now. I'll deal with you when I actually have the energy to. This conversation I keep replaying, I see you too. You don't need to keep repeating tonight. I heard you the first time. This might sound like a strange thing to do, speaking quietly to your own thoughts like this, but there's real power in it, because most unresolved thoughts don't actually need to be solved right then. They just need to be acknowledged instead of ignored. A thought that's been noticed feels different from a thought that's been avoided. Noticed thoughts tend to quiet down. Avoided thoughts tend to get louder, precisely because they're trying to get your attention and you keep refusing to give it. There's something else worth understanding here too. The clutter in your mental room isn't only made up of your own thoughts. A surprising amount of it belongs to other people. Something someone said about you weeks ago, still sitting there, unexamined. An expectation someone placed on you that you never actually agreed to, but carried anyway because it felt easier than pushing back. A comparison you didn't ask to make, but made anyway, because someone else's life got placed on your shelf without your permission. Part of tidying this room is recognizing which items in it actually belong to you, and which ones you've simply been storing for someone else, out of habit, without ever questioning why. Over time, this becomes less like an exercise you have to remember to do, and more like a natural closing ritual, the same way you might tidy a physical room before leaving it for the night. You're not trying to achieve a perfectly empty mind. That was never realistic and never actually the goal. You're simply making sure that what remains in that room is arranged with a little more care than it was during the chaos of the day. A few things set down, a little more space to breathe, a little less weight pressing against your chest when you finally close your eyes. It also helps to remember that a room doesn't need to be perfect to feel peaceful. You don't need every corner spotless. You don't need every shelf perfectly labeled. Even a small amount of order, one worry set down, one argument finally let go of for the night, changes the entire feeling of the space. It's not about achieving some ideal, finished version of stillness. It's about the ongoing, imperfect practice of returning to the room each night and doing what you reasonably can, without demanding perfection from yourself, in a place that was never meant to be perfectly clean to begin with. This is one of the quietest, most overlooked skills a person can build, not silencing your mind completely, but learning how to organize it gently enough that it feels less like a storage unit crammed full of everything you never had time to deal with, and more like a room you could actually rest in, not empty, just arranged. Not silent, just settled, and most nights, that's more than enough to finally let sleep arrive the way it's supposed to. Stillness is not silence. There's a mistake almost everyone makes when they first try to find peace of mind, and it's such a common mistake that it quietly ruins the whole attempt before it even begins. People assume that a calm mind means an empty one. They picture stillness as some kind of blank white room, no thoughts, no noise, nothing moving at all. And when they try to meditate, or breathe, or simply lie still at night hoping for that emptiness, and it doesn't come, thoughts keep showing up anyway. They assume they've failed. They assume they're bad at this. They assume real peace must be for other people, calmer people, people whose minds don't race the way theirs does. But that entire assumption is built on a misunderstanding of what stillness actually is. Real stillness was never about having no thoughts. That's not peace. That's suppression. And suppression, no matter how hard you work at it, never actually lasts. You can force your mind quiet for a few minutes through sheer willpower, holding thoughts down the way you'd hold a door shut against wind. But the moment your effort slips, even slightly, everything comes rushing back in, usually louder than before. This is why people who chase silence as the goal often end up more frustrated than when they started. They're trying to reach something that was never actually the destination. Here's the picture worth holding on to instead. Think about the sky on a day when clouds are moving across it. Some days the sky is full of them, thick, gray, moving fast, maybe even threatening rain. Other days, there are just a few, light and slow, drifting without urgency. But no matter how many clouds pass through, no matter how heavy or how frequent, the sky itself never becomes the clouds. It never has to fight them to remain sky. It doesn't tense up when a storm rolls in, and it doesn't celebrate when the clouds finally clear. It simply stays exactly what it is, vast, open, unchanged underneath all that movement, while everything passes through it. This is what real stillness actually looks like inside a person, not the absence of thought, not a mind wiped clean of everything moving through it. Just the sky, staying sky, no matter what kind of weather happens to be passing by that day. You can hold your own thoughts this way. You don't have to become each thought that shows up. You don't have to fight every worry into submission or chase every fear away before you're allowed to feel calm. You simply have to remember that you are the space these thoughts are moving through, not the thoughts themselves. A worry can appear, sit there for a while, and eventually pass, the same way a cloud drifts across the horizon and eventually disappears past the edge of what you can see. You don't need to grab it. You don't need to argue with it. You don't even need to understand exactly why it showed up. You just need to let it move, the way weather always eventually moves, because that's simply what weather does. This shift changes something fundamental about how nighttime thoughts feel. Instead of lying there thinking, "I need to stop thinking so I can sleep," which almost always backfires and makes the mind more restless, not less, you can instead think, "These thoughts are allowed to be here. I don't have to fight them. I don't have to become them. I can just be the space they're passing through." That single reframing takes so much pressure off. You're no longer trying to win an impossible battle against your own mind. You're simply allowing weather to be weather, while remaining, underneath it all, exactly what you've always been, steady, open, unchanged by whatever happens to be moving across you tonight. It's worth noticing, too, how much energy gets spent trying to control the weather rather than simply letting it pass. Every time you argue with a thought, analyze why it showed up, or try to force it away before it's ready to leave, you're spending energy that could have gone toward actual rest. The sky never wastes energy fighting its clouds. It doesn't need to, because it already knows, on some deep level, that no cloud has ever stayed forever. That same knowing is available to you, even if it takes practice to remember it, in the moment a heavy thought arrives. It helps to remember that clouds, no matter how dark or heavy, are always temporary. Even the longest storm eventually passes. Even the thickest cloud cover eventually clears, revealing the same sky that was there the entire time, patiently waiting underneath. Your thoughts work exactly the same way, even the heaviest ones, even the ones that feel unbearable in the moment. They are not permanent residents, they are visitors, moving through, the same way every thought you've ever had has eventually passed, whether you fought it or not. This is worth remembering, especially on nights when your mind feels particularly loud, particularly chaotic, particularly relentless. On those nights, it's tempting to believe something has gone wrong, that you should be doing better, that a calmer person wouldn't be lying here with this many thoughts crowding in. But a stormy sky isn't a broken sky. It's simply a sky going through weather, the same as any other sky eventually does. You're not failing at stillness just because your mind is busy tonight. You're simply having a cloudy night, and cloudy nights, like all nights, eventually pass into morning. There's also something freeing in realizing that you don't have to earn a clear sky through effort. You don't have to meditate perfectly, breathe perfectly, or think the right thoughts in the right order to deserve a quiet mind. The sky was never something you built. It was always there, underneath the clouds, whether you noticed it or not. In the same way, the calm, steady part of you was never something you have to construct from nothing. It's already there, waiting quietly beneath whatever storm happens to be passing through tonight, patient as it's always been. The practice, then, isn't about forcing your mind empty. It's about practicing being the sky instead of the clouds, over and over, gently, without judging yourself when it's hard to remember. Some nights this will feel almost effortless. Thoughts will drift by and you'll barely notice them, resting easily in that quiet, open space underneath. Other nights it will feel nearly impossible, and the clouds will feel endless, thick, refusing to move at all. Both nights are normal. Both nights are part of what it actually means to be a person with a mind that thinks, worries, remembers, and imagines constantly, the way every human mind does. What matters isn't whether the clouds show up. They always will, in one form or another, for the rest of your life. What matters is whether you remember, even briefly, that you are not required to become them. You can watch a worry cross your mind without letting it define the entire night. You can notice a memory rise up without needing to relive it completely. You can feel a wave of anxiety pass through you without believing, even for a second, that it's the only thing you are. This is what real stillness offers. Not a mind free of thought, but a mind no longer at war with the thoughts that naturally arise within it. Not silence, but space. Not emptiness, but room enough to hold whatever moves through, without losing yourself in the process. That space has always been there, quietly, underneath every thought you've ever had. You don't have to build it. You don't have to earn it. You simply have to remember, again and again, that you were the sky the whole time, and the clouds, no matter how many arrive, were only ever passing through. The practice of letting the day end. There's something almost nobody teaches you growing up, and its absence quietly costs people more peace than they probably realize. Nobody ever sits you down and explains how to actually finish a day. School teaches you how to start things, how to plan, how to prepare, how to set goals for tomorrow. Work teaches you how to be productive, how to push through, how to keep going even when you're tired. But almost nobody teaches you how to close a day properly, how to say, with any real conviction, this day is finished now, and mean it enough that your mind actually believes you. So instead, most people carry today straight into tomorrow without ever formally letting it go. There's no closing ritual, no clear moment where the day is allowed to end. It just keeps running quietly in the background all night, unresolved, unfinished, waiting for attention it never quite gets, because you're either too exhausted to give it or too asleep to notice it's still there. This is part of why so many people lie down exhausted and still can't seem to fall asleep. It isn't always about being wired or overstimulated. Sometimes it's simply that the day never actually got permission to end. It's still open, like a browser tab that never got closed, quietly running in the background, consuming energy, even though you're not actively looking at it anymore. Think about how naturally this happens with other things in life. A meeting has a clear ending. Someone says, "Let's wrap up," and everyone knows it's over. A meal has a clear ending. The plate is empty, the fork goes down. It's finished. Even a movie has a clear ending. The screen goes dark, credits roll. You know it's done. But the day itself? Most people never give it that same kind of clear, intentional closing. It just fades into sleep, unfinished, with no acknowledgement that anything is actually over. This matters more than it seems, because your mind, in a strange way, needs permission to stop working just as much as your body needs permission to stop moving. If you never formally tell your mind, "We're done for today," it assumes, quite reasonably, that it should keep going, keep planning, keep worrying, keep replaying, keep preparing, because as far as your mind is concerned, nobody has told it otherwise. So here's something worth trying, especially on nights when your thoughts refuse to settle. Instead of reaching for your phone one more time, instead of running through tomorrow's to-do list one more time, instead of replaying today's conversations one more time, Try something smaller, quieter, and far more effective. Try actually ending your day on purpose. This doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't require a long ritual or specific words you have to memorize. It can be as simple as a quiet, honest acknowledgement to yourself. This day is over now. Not perfect, not fully resolved, not everything accomplished that you hoped it would be. Just over, the same way every day eventually has to end, whether it feels finished or not. Part of what makes this work is the second half of that acknowledgement, which is just as important as the first. Nothing left to fix tonight. This single sentence carries more weight than it seems to at first glance, because so much nighttime restlessness comes from the quiet, nagging feeling that there's still something you should be doing, some problem still needing your attention, some worry still needing to be solved before you're allowed to rest. But almost nothing that arises at night can actually be solved at night. The people you'd need to talk to are asleep. The tasks you're worried about can't be done right now. The decisions you're turning over can't actually be made with any clarity while you're exhausted in the dark. All that's really happening is your mind spinning on problems that have no access to solutions at this hour, and spinning without any possibility of resolution is exhausting in a very particular, pointless way. Reminding yourself, gently but firmly, that whatever wasn't finished today will still be there tomorrow isn't giving up on it. It's simply telling the truth. Whatever it is, the unfinished conversation, the unresolved worry, the unmade decision, it will still exist tomorrow morning, waiting for you, exactly where you left it. And tomorrow, you'll actually have the resources to meet it. Daylight, energy, a clearer mind, the ability to actually do something about it, instead of just turning it over uselessly in the dark, where nothing can be resolved anyway. This is what a closing ritual actually offers you. Not a solution to everything unfinished, but permission to stop working on it for now. Permission that almost nobody gives themselves, because nobody ever taught them it was allowed. You can build this ritual to be as simple or as detailed as feels right for you. For some people, it's a few slow breaths paired with a quiet mental sentence. This day is done. I did what I could. The rest can wait. For others, it's something slightly more physical. Closing a journal, turning off a light, setting a phone aside with intention, rather than just letting your eyes get tired from scrolling. What matters isn't the specific form it takes. What matters is that there's a clear, honest moment where you tell yourself the day has ended, and you actually mean it. Over time, this becomes less like something you have to remember to do, and more like a doorway your mind learns to recognize. The same way your body eventually learns that dimmed lights and a quiet room mean it's time to wind down, your mind can learn that this small ritual means the same thing, that today's business is finished, that nothing more needs to be carried tonight, that it's finally, fully allowed to rest. This day is over now. Whatever wasn't finished will still be there tomorrow, waiting for a version of you with more strength, more clarity, and more daylight to meet it properly. Tonight, there's nothing left to do but let it end. And here's the moment I want you to really sit with. You don't find a quiet mind by defeating your thoughts. You find it by finally, for once, not needing them to stop. That's the whole shift. Not silence. Surrender, not the defeated kind, but the peaceful kind. The kind where you finally stop treating your own mind like a problem to solve, and start treating it like a sky, wide enough to hold whatever moves through it. So tonight, when you lie down and your thoughts start their usual noise, you don't have to fight them into silence. You don't have to outrun them, argue with them, or numb them into submission. You just have to remember, you are not the storm. You never were. You are the space the storm happens in. And space, no matter how loud things get inside it, never actually gets crowded. It just holds, quietly, the way it always has. Remember that candle in the dark room. That's not an image of emptiness. That's an image of enough. Just enough light to see, just enough stillness to rest, just enough quiet to finally hear yourself think without needing to fix every thought that shows up. You don't need a perfectly silent mind to sleep well. You need a mind that isn't afraid of its own noise anymore. So tonight, when the thoughts come, and they will, don't reach for your phone. Don't reach for distraction. Just breathe in for 4, hold, breathe out for 6, and let the room inside you settle, one thought at a time, the way mud settles in still water until you can finally see clearly again. If this helped you feel even a little more at peace, subscribe. There's more of this waiting for you.